Hello! So in today's mini tip I want to share with you how to get the best out of your slice cutter using it on some smooth paper. Today I'm going to be demonstrating on some Hahnemühle Nostalgie paper, which is a fairly smooth paper. It just has a very light texture to it. Now, I would always recommend trying out your slice cutter on a spare piece of paper before using it on an actual drawing, just to test out your paper, because it would be awful if you ended up damaging your drawing. Now, the first thing we need to obviously do is to apply some pencil to the paper so that I can show you how to use the tool. Now, first of all, often when we're drawing, you might be using lots of light layers. So I'm just going to do two different test patches here for you to see. So this one, I'm just going to do all of the layers very light and keeping the pencil fairly light. So okay, so for this one, as you can see, I've put down some very light layers. Some I've kept just a light colour, some I've built up to a darker colour. So let's see what would happen if you used your slice cutter if you've drawn like this. Well, as you can see, if I draw some lines across that one, not a lot is really happening. I've taken off a few tiny bits of pencil, but you really can't see anything. What about if on the darker colours, light layers? Again, nothing particularly really happening, very slight marks, can't really see it, really disappointing. If this is happening to you, let me show you what you can do to improve. So, the key to using it is to get down a waxy pencil rather than an oil-based pencil. So I'm using the Luminance range, but there are other waxy pencils such as the Prismacolor you can use. You need to make sure you get down a layer of thick pencil down of the layer you want to be going down to. Because like on here, for example, if you really want it to stand out, you might be digging and digging and digging, and you'll end up digging a hole in the paper because you're trying to get to the white of the paper, as it were. So let me just show you with a white and with a brown ochre 10% what you can do with that firmer layer. So I'm going to start with quite a firmish light layer, light colour I should say, base layer, not a light layer. It's got, I've got a decent amount on there. I'm also then going to do a white one to show you, and I'm using a firm layer for that too. Okay, and then just build up your layers in the same way. So I'm going to just put, after that white, I'm going to put down a layer of the brown ochre 10%. I might have to just press a tiny bit firmer because it's on white, just to get some of that colour out. And then another light layer, 50%. And then a brown ochre. Now I am having to press a little bit harder because I'm obviously trying to cover up that white a bit more. And to make it stand out, I'm going to get a sepia on the top half so we can see the difference when you've got a darker colour. Now I'm going to go over this to smooth it out a little bit, so I've got more of a medium pressure on this last layer to try and smooth it out a bit. Now obviously with the white underneath, the colours have come out slightly different, so that is something to bear in mind, but you can build up though. I've just pressed a bit firmer on that one to get it a bit darker. So let's have a look and see what happens now we've got that firmer layer of where we want to go down to. So if I draw some lines here, not pressing too hard, just stroking it across the paper. You can see the difference that has made compared to over here. By having that lighter colour underneath with a firmish layer, we are able to then gently scrape off those top other layers over the top of that sort of firmer layer to scrape down. So you can, obviously in the dark, you can see it quite clearly here when we had the brown ochre underneath. This one underneath, you can just about see the lines, but not so much. It's the colours too similar. This one where we've got white underneath, you can really see the lines in the dark areas, and I can see the lines in the lighter areas because the white is obviously different to those colours that we put over the top. So it's going to play a really important part what base colour you want to be scraping back to, or colours, for the difference that is going to make. So the big mini tip today is when you are scraping down to or gently lifting down, you need to make sure that your colour you want to go to has got a fairly firm pressure over it. So even if you don't want to start with your like white, for example, if I get this one here and I'm just going to do a light layer of the brown ochre, make sure I get a smooth covering. I'm then going to put some burnt sienna, 10%, and then a bit of the brown ochre, all in a light pressure. And then I can always go back and I could get my white to blend them together and do kind of a medium to firm waxy layer. Or I could even go back to the first colour I've used, the brown ochre 10%, press a bit firmer to mix those colours together underneath. Okay, and then I know I want to go a bit darker, so I'm going to build up my colours. I'm going to get a raw umber, 50%, and I'm just going to wash some of that over that kind of middle firmer layer, as it were. And then I'm going to add some sepia again. On my final layers, I'm just starting to press a little bit firmer. I'm not putting a massive pressure on it. And say, you know, I might want to add a bit of blue into my brown, for example, just a light layer of that. I'll do that on the top half, and then, you know, you might want to just blend it together a bit more with another bit of brown. So you're kind of building up these layers of colour, obviously more neatly than I'm doing now in my hurry. And then because we've put the firmer layer in the middle, let's see what happens this time rather than as a base coat. You can see that there, you can see I've made some very distinguishable lines. So another tip is it doesn't necessarily have to be your base coat that has that firmer, waxier layer in it. It could be some of the middle layers that you are wanting to go back to, where you've put the colour down and then you've pressed a bit firmer with, say, your lightest colour or a white, and then carried on building up your layers so you can scrape back. Obviously, I will find on this smoother paper, the lines will come out a lot stronger if you've got a darker colour and you're scraping back to a really light colour. Sometimes, though, you might want it to be more subtle, and so you don't have to have such a contrast between your firmer layer and your top layer of colour, as it were. You might want it to be a little bit more subtle in tone, depending upon what you are drawing. So key mini tip today is you can use any of these slice cutters. I've got the manual pen slice cutter here, but you can use any of them. So remember, you need a firm layer of a waxy based pencil, either as your base coat or somewhere in the middle, so that you can actually gently just stroke along to lift out the bits that you want to be lifting out. If you've just got light layers, it doesn't happen and you end up scraping away the paper. Polychromos pencils that are a bit harder and not obviously as waxy as the Luminance, what happens there? So if I just go for a light layer of a light colour, okay, I'm going to do 2 test patches. Okay, start off with a light coverage and then another light layer of another colour. Now this one I'm going to do a firm layer of the my first colour. Okay, this one I'm going to do a firm layer using that brown ochre 10% again. It's very good for kind of mixing those colours together, so I'm doing fairly firmish layer of that. So I don't actually have the exact obviously same colours because I don't have a lot of polychromos in my collection, so I don't use them that much. And then I'm going to put in some layer, not pressing too hard, medium, just because we've got a fairly firm layer down. Try and get a fairly smooth coverage of the brown over the top. Let's just see if we can go a tiny bit darker to make it stand out a bit more for you. Just do a couple of layers of your darker colours, building them up, and let's see what happens when we use the slice cutter. So this one had a firmer layer of the polychromos. As you can see, not a lot is really happening. This one had that waxy layer in the middle where we blended some of those underneath colours together with using a lighter Luminance. So let's have a look at this one. This one, you can see we have got some lines going on. Now they haven't stood out as much because I suspect the colour is a bit too similar to the top colour. Now if I just try that again using a white, for example, so I'm just going to do my light sort of coloured base layers, and this time I'm going to get a white and I'm going to try and just mix them together using that kind of firmish pressure, and then I can continue building up with my polychromos. Now obviously, like we said, you're getting a slightly different outcome to the final tone as well, which is something you will need to bear in mind when you're building up your layers, depending on what colour you've applied underneath with your firm layer. This one's obviously turned out a bit brighter because it's got the white, so we've got a fairly firmish layer on top with the polychromos, and let's slice through this. Now you can see the difference that has made, having that really light firm pressure waxy pencil in the middle you can see that is how, if you like using your polychromos, how you can use your slice tool with them on a smooth paper by adding that waxy light layer in the middle, as it were, to get to some of those lighter tones. Hope you find that helpful. Bye.